excellence and increasing the role of minority and women-owned businesses in New York State. Throughout a long career in public service, Governor Paterson has demonstrated an ability to effect change at every level and has been a strong progressive leader for all New Yorkers. Governor Paterson is also nationally recognized as a leading advocate for the visually and physically impaired. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, go Brooklyn, and earned his bachelor's degree in history from Columbia University. He also completed his JD at Hofstra Law School and completed the New York City Marathon in 1999. So without further ado, I introduce you to Governor David A. Paterson.
Well, thank you, Sabrina, and good morning to all of you, and welcome to the BLA Power Breakfast, which stands for Bill Lynch Associates, over the last 20 years. Before that, the BLA breakfast we had with the Black Liberation Army. And it is a pleasure to be here. I always wanted to, someone's calling me. It's not Bill Lynch, so I don't have to take it. So, when I started to run for office, it was actually a meeting that was held 26 and a half years ago that was chaired by Bill Lynch. And I think Bill Lynch, among his many distinctions, is not given enough credit for the fact that he allowed the young people in this community and in a lot of other communities, particularly young people of color, to have a voice. The thing that really shocked me when I first got into office is that I saw individuals in other neighborhoods in their 20s who were acting as district leaders. One of them is now the borough president of Manhattan, Scott Stringer. But in the African American and Hispanic communities, when I took office, the average age of the legislators was 58 years old. The average age of the white legislators was 37 years old. So this whole sense of apprenticeship seemed to have been lost in our community. And people like Percy Sutton and my father, Basil Paterson, and Bill Lynch were exceptions to that, always bringing young people together, having these types of breakfasts, doing the networking that Sabrina just talked about. And by the way, I was around someone who helped me when I was younger. He's in his late 70s. He's a partner, he's a managing partner of a major law firm in this state, and he was waiting for me for breakfast the other day, and what he was doing was transcribing the business cards he made. So if he felt the need to do it at this point, it seems to me he owns half the world, then I guess it's good for all of us to do it here today. And who knows, you may be sitting next to the next district leader, you may be sitting next to the next congressperson, you might be sitting next to the next governor. And that's not me, by the way. So I wanted to just talk about the process and how many of you who are younger, who are aspiring into the process, can always be involved. And let you know that we're right here at Sylvia's on Malcolm X Boulevard, named for Malcolm X, who lived in our time and offered us a steadfast and disciplined criticism and honesty about the America as it was for whites in the 50s and 60s when he came to popularity, and for the so-called 30 million Negro Americans that he referred to at that particular time. Malcolm X never really worried what anybody else thought. He spoke out against injustice with the truth. Parts of 125th Street are named for Martin Luther King. There need be nothing else said about that. But also the streets are named for Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the greatest job-creating congressman in this whole area until Congressman Rangel, and of course for Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, who was vigilant as an abolitionist and commanded all of us that you never, ever get crops without plowing up the ground. So in other words, it is not easy, it is not safe to try to make change. And that is the way I grew up. Those were the voices that I listened to. And when I became a state senator in the end of 1985, what Bill said to me and what others said to me is like, we did not put you there to hold a place, and we didn't put you there to be a young, like, puppy, that's what they were calling we planned. We put you there to make change. And so the first thing that I was involved in 3 months into my service was a march right here from 125th Street through Central Park to protest the apartheid conditions in South Africa. I think somewhere between then and now, there's an evolutionary thinking that the best way to achieve is to stay out of the friction and stay out of the fighting. Now, when I first went into the legislature and I wanted to be part of that conflict, I remember going to meet with student groups and with an assemblyman named Roger Green. And when I'd go to meet with the student groups, they'd yell at us. We were the two legislators that came to talk to them. And I thought, boy, they have a nerve. And you go meet with tenants associations, they yell at you. The other elected officials weren't even there. They're yelling at me. And as time went on, believe it or not, when I got to become the minority leader of the Senate and lieutenant governor and then governor, I actually missed those students. I never thought I'd ever say it because they were always yelling at me, but no one was yelling at all. No one was complaining about anything other than things that affected them completely directly. And you know, we are now in the era of the millennia babies. Millennia babies are babies born after 1982. They're now over 86 million in this country. The baby boomers are old hat, 76 million and dwindling. The point is that the millennia babies have a totally different orientation. It's texting, it's blogging, it's self-absorption. It's not the kind of service that was being delineated before. I'm sorry, but you all asked me to speak, so I'm going to do it. And we are waiting for when the millennia babies wake up in the third millennium and start thinking about the things that are affecting them that went on in the second millennium. And this is why I think so many of you can play a role. Sometimes you just have to do it, even if there's no one there to do it with you. And that is often lonely. It's uncharted territory. It's difficult. You will get flack for it, but in the end, you rest in peace. And I don't mean that you're dead. In other words, that when you stop doing it, you will be proud of yourself, and you can affect change. Now, for 35 years in this state, this community and many others were affected by the Rockefeller drug laws, the most dangerous and punishing drug laws in the country. 70% more time and punishment for low-level drug dealing and low-level drug possession than any other state. The second state was Ohio, not even close to the punishments that New York put in. Republicans and Democrats knew it was wrong. A Republican state senator, believe it or not, led the movement to try to reform the Rockefeller drug laws. In 2004, they passed legislation that did next to nothing and called that the Rockefeller drug law reform. I knew in 2008 that we would have a chance to elect Democrats in both the Senate and the Assembly in New York. I knew that was a chance to pass real reforms to the Rockefeller drug laws, along with Assemblyman Jeff Aubrey, who had been fighting for it for years. And so in 2009, we passed that legislation. And now we have drug interventions, we have drug courts, we have judicial discretion, and we have a package where when someone is convicted of drug offenses, not the kingpins, we actually lengthened and increased the penalties against them. But those who were dealing to support their own habits, or those who really were dealing just in their own neighborhoods and probably because there was no other way for them to work. And we implemented a policy that now has changed the entire perception of what drug abuse is, because it's abuse more than it is really a crime. And we changed that by passing that type of legislation. Now, you might not believe this, but minority and women-owned businesses received only 5% of the procurement contracts from New York State when Governor Spitzer took office in 2007. 5%. Now, last I checked, women are 51.8% of the population. They were 29% of those pre-approved. In other words, they had crossed the threshold. They were qualified to get business from the state. Women business owners. You know how much business they got? 2.67%. 29% of the pre-approved contracts and got less than 10% of what their value was in terms of percentage. Asian Americans were 8% of the pre-approved contracts. They got 1% of them. Hispanic Amerians, they were 9.2%. In other words, they had gotten bonded, they had the money, they had passed all of the tests, their background checks were good. 9.2% of those people who passed that process were Hispanic. You know how much business they got? 0.74, that's 1/3 of the contracts. African Americans, 8.2% of the pre-approved, 0.66, 2/3 of the contracts. Absolutely appalling. 46 of the 50 states. Even the state of Mississippi, you know, whenever we talk about racism, we go back to Mississippi because everything seemed to happen there. Goodman and Schwerner and the Cheney murder and all the problems in Mississippi. Well, Mississippi, they still don't really like too many black people, but they'll give you a contract more than New York will. Their governor, Haley Barbour, championed some of the segregation laws. He championed them when he was a potential candidate for president last year. But his MWBE program was better than New York's. And so we decided to try to change it. In the first year, Governor Spitzer, never, to be fair to him, he never declined to help when we asked him to. But I never got the impression that the word was given to his agency heads that it's time to really give qualified men and women, business owners, an opportunity in this state. So by the second year of the administration, we were continuing to meet, but nothing was happening. And then something happened. I won't go into what that was. But the result of it was that I became governor. And I had a meeting with the cabinet. It was the most fascinating meeting I've ever attended. You have never seen such drama. Because the standard protocol is that when a new governor takes office, everyone has to resign. So everybody is basically done and with no notice. And they're sitting in the room. You could feel the tension. You could cut it with a knife. And I said, I don't know what all the tension is around here. I would assume that if we have qualified professionals here, that there'd be very few changes we'd want to make right now, since there's been a sudden change at the head of the government. I mean, do you all honestly feel that you have fulfilled the Constitution of the United States and the state of New York? If you do, raise your hand. They all raise their hands. And I said, do you feel that you can be as loyal to the new governor as you were to the last governor? And they all raised their hands. I said, are we doing MWBE around here? It's amazing, because that's how you make change. Strong leadership at the executive levels. People started calling me about offers they got from the state before I was even in office. And I was sworn in 3 days later, because people in the administration wanted to keep their jobs. And but I realized that that was a momentary thing they did to save their jobs, so we moved them out anyway. And the reason we did is because we wanted to have an MWBE plan, one that was so successful that we quadrupled minority participation in procurement, and sextupled, that's 6 times, not a sex scandal. Sextuple means that we increased the minority participation from 4.3% to 24.9% in the investment banking, insurance, and the sales of securities and bonds. Then I learned something from one of my other mentors, David Dinkins. I didn't do anything that David Dinges didn't do. He increased minority participation in the women and minority participation in city contracts from 7% to 19.8% in his tenure from 1990 to 1993 as mayor. But Executive Order 1, when Mayor Giuliani came in 1994, eliminated the whole program. By the time Giuliani was done, minority participation was down to 1.5%. It is lower now under Mayor Bloomberg, and I don't care if he finds out I said this, it's true. It is lower now than it was even under Giuliani. And I realized that the only way to protect this was to pass legislation. We had to formulate the law in this state, and that's what we did. And fortunately for us, the next governor is Governor Cuomo, and he's actually expanding the program. We're going to have a statewide diversity officer. We'll never have the problems we had up until 2008. New York has gone from 46th to the top 10 in this country in minority and women-owned business performance. Finally, there was a young Chinese immigrant by the name of King Wu who lived in Chinatown. When he was 13 or 14, he joined a gang. He was in an armed robbery and sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile facility. He served his time. He went back and got his high school diploma. He then went to college. He then became a prominent businessman in Chinatown, joined a lot of committees, and they wanted to put him on a government committee, and they said, you should really get your citizenship. Mr. Wu applied for his citizenship and was immediately taken into custody and sent to the 6th Circuit in Texas for deportation because he had committed this crime when he was 13. He was now 31 years old. And in addition, Mr. Wu had left China when he was 5 and does not speak Chinese. I realized the way to save him from being deported was to pardon him for the crime. This didn't go over very well at INS, but the fact is, it didn't go over with them some time ago when I pardoned Slick Rick. People still pass me on the street today, they go, I don't care what you did, I love you, pardon Slick Rick. But if you knew the Slick Rick case, it was crying out for a pardon by its merits, not the fact that it was Ricky Walters. And we set up an immigration pardon panel and pardoned 36 other people like King Wu, who were people who had been convicted of low-level crimes. And as late as 50 years later, there was a woman, 50 years later, they decided to deport her back to Costa Rica. She was a domestic who had passed a bad check when she was 20. She's 70 years old. They're going to throw her out of the country. But we stopped. And these are the types of actions you have to take, sometimes irrelevant to whatever the public view is, because that's how you change the public view. That's how you change justice from the public perspective. And I hope that all of you will understand that you're looking at people in this room who want to do the same thing you do. And as long as you stick together, it'll even be greater than if one of you has to do it alone. Sometimes individuals have to step out and do it alone. And sometimes you can do it in a group. And when you're able to organize a group and do it, as some of these great leaders whose streets are named in their honor, you find you can really make change. And there will be people who will be growing up, never know the effort you waged, and yet it will be your own satisfaction that really heeds you the most. I will say that there was an individual who lived in a neighborhood out in Suffolk County known as Miller Place, and his name was John White. And John White was confronted by 12 individuals who said they were going to kill his son. He drew a firearm and told them to leave. They didn't. As they approached him, one of them hit the gun, but it didn't fall out of his hand. He fired the gun, and he killed a young man. And it was sad, because it was a 17-year-old kid who was probably intoxicated at the time. But John White was convicted and sentenced to 4 years, and and in the sentencing, the judge said, "We wish there's some other way we could do this, but unfortunately we have to do it this way." So we found a better way and commuted his sentence days before I left office. Now, I went to an event about 3 days before I left office, and everybody was congratulating me about this commutation, because they sure weren't in the greater area. And I felt that when I was governor, I got asked questions that no one ever got asked. And the question I was asked was, your pardon panel voted not to commute a sentence. Why would you reverse their decision? I said, because the pardon panel is not the governor. I didn't reverse any decision, I made a decision. So, anyway, this guy came up and he said, I'll tell you, I will never forget what you did. And I said, so you like what I did for John White? And he looked at me and he said, no, sir, I am John White. And I'll tell you, that 1 second made the rest of the crap I had to go through as governor all worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Paterson. I think you all will agree that Governor Paterson's words were both inspiring, real, and give us a lot to think about as we're working on our own paths in community building. And that's what this is really about, is giving you tools and giving you resources so that as you do your work, you're thinking about getting help from those beside you, those who've gone before you, because it's all about building our community and we got to do it together. So thank you again, Governor Paterson. Can we give him one more round of applause? And I'd like to introduce Rodneyce Bichot, who's now going to present an award to Governor Paterson.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Bill Lynch for holding this breakfast, galvanizing young professionals to address community building. So thank you, Mr. Bill Lynch. And I'd like to thank Governor Paterson for being here today with the words of wisdom, inspiring all of us. Thank you for being here. My name is Rodneyce Bichot. I am the 42nd District leader of the 42nd Assembly in Brooklyn. I cover the East Flatbush Midwood neighborhood, which is a neighborhood that consists of the highest Haitian population in the whole United States outside of Miami. And this award is relevant to what I'm about to say. This award is an award that's given by the President of Haiti, Michel Martelly, and the Minister of Haiti of Haitians Living Abroad, Danielle Souplice, and 1199 for the work that Governor Paterson have done for Haiti and all the support. And I'm here to present this award on behalf of the Haitians in Haiti, the Haitians Americans in the United States, the Haitian Americans in my community. One thing I would like to say is that the earthquake was devastated, mostly not because of the earthquake itself, but because of the economic conditions that Haiti was in. It was not in a situation where homes and infrastructures were built in a level that it should have been. And Haiti's backbone is heavily weighted on the diaspora, the Haitian diaspora who's here. But there's a problem because in our communities and with the economic downturn, we're not investing. We're not investing. We're not in a position. And so Governor Paterson's bill to increase minority women business enterprise participation and having access to discretionary fund makes it possible so that our communities can be flourished and be in a position to help our other communities. So in that, we thank you, Governor Paterson, for introducing this bill, because when we help ourselves, we can help others abroad. And when our communities succeed, countries like Haiti will succeed, and all of us will succeed. So we thank you very much for all that you've done. And I'd like to present this award. Ministre des Haïtiens vivant l'étranger, honneur et reconnaissance à David A. Paterson. Thank you.
Well, thank you. As you know, Haiti liberated itself in 1791, which seemed like a good thing. But this country was massacred time and time again by other countries who didn't like the leadership of the country, and it went on for over 200 years. And one of the reasons the earthquake was so devastating is because the buildings in Haiti were poorly built because they never really had the resources to do it right. And now everybody feels bad when something happened to this country that the rest of the world persecuted. There's no country more persecuted than the country of Haiti by the rest of the region and even the international population for decades and hundreds of years, really. And so finally it took a 7-point earthquake and damages beyond the imagination of Americans to get people to do something for this country, and we're really glad for every opportunity that we can help. And certainly, if you read the story of Haiti, it tells you a lot about what happens to those of color who have aspired for leadership in this country. You see it happening right now to the President of the United States, where we have not gotten into a post-racial period. And though they may not want to talk about it, that really has a lot to do with a lot of the antagonism he receives.
Okay, thank you again. And if you'd like to hear more from Governor Paterson, check out his radio show on WOR. All right, thank you again for being here. We'll see you next month. Thank you.